Hey there Nation, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and we are back with another episode of Way of the Underhive. This series is dedicated to helping brand new players to Necromunda build their starting rosters and learn more about the game mechanics of their favorite gangs. And on this episode we will discuss playing a House Cawdor Outcast gang. We'll discuss their strengths, their weaknesses, their fighters, their playstyle, and provide you with 3 1400 point starting rosters to begin your very first campaign of Necromunda inside the Ash Wastes. So as you guys have been aware, we have been going through all the different types of outcast gangs with different delegations for criminals, guilds, as well as for noble houses. So now what we're doing now is we're going to be focusing the next few videos on house-specific outcast gangs. So these are the 6 starting noble houses that you get to play with right when Necromunda started dropping. There's a lot of really cool game mechanics involved with outcast gangs, especially when you combine them with house lists. And now that you can take your gang out to the Ash Waste and throw vehicles into the mix, you can make some really awesome combinations and also exploit some really cool game mechanics that you can use to bring yourself some glory out in the Ash Wastes. So with that being said, let's get this video on a roll by starting about strengths and weaknesses of playing a house outcast gang. So first of all, let's talk about the strengths of playing a House Outcast gang. First of all, Outcast gangs have cheaper leaders, champions, and fighters than normal House gangs. Alright, especially when it comes to leaders, you actually have 4 different stat lines you can actually choose to make your leaders, so they're very, very versatile. Or you can actually substitute that leader character with a Dramatis Personae leader and from that specific house. So for example, let's say you want to have a house agent to lead your gang, you can possibly do that because all you gotta do is take that stats, pay for the cost, and use that to lead your Outcast game, which allows you to make some really, really cool options and a lot of different types of gangs and add a lot of variety to the gangs that can be fielded in a campaign of Necromunda. At the same time, you also have access to all the same weapons, war gear, brutes, hanger-ons, upgrades, all the different kind of game mechanics that you can purchase for a gang. You can also put that for your Outcast gang as well because it's also relatively available. Because as a house Outcast gang, you have access to those house gear. At the same time, you also gain access to the starting gear that comes with the Outcast gang. So for example, if you want to use a chain sword, for example, and normally your house gang can't have that, well, you can use it because now it's available to your Outcast list, which is kind of nice as well. At the same time, your champions and your leaders also have no weapon and equipment restrictions from the house list either, which is also really nice too. So for example, if you have a fighter with specific gear that can be taken by the entire gang, so for example, if you have a prospect level character who's the only character that can take that type of weapon for a house gang, well, in an Outcast gang, it's free reign. That weapon can go to any fighter that you want, which is really, really awesome as well. So because of that, you can make some really powerful exploits as well as some very powerful combinations for your Outcast gangs. Now, with all the strengths involved of playing an Outcast gang, there are some notable weaknesses, and let's go ahead and talk about that next. Alright, so let's talk about the obvious weakness of playing an Outcast gang. Outcast champions and Outcast scum have pretty mediocre stats compared to their house-specific counterparts, okay? So they're especially their psychology stats, like their leadership, cool, willpower, same thing with intelligence, they're kind of mediocre at best. And same thing with their combat stats as well. So they will not be as good as house-specific champions and house-specific scum. At the same time, you don't have access to the same type of skills or some special abilities and some unique game mechanics of the normal house lists. Alright, so for example, if there's a very unique kind of skill that's specific to a house, you won't be able to access that because your Outcast scum only have access to cunning, for example, as their primary skill, and your champions can only take archetype specific skills, so you can't get those other skills from that. So that part is kind of sad as well. At the same time, you also have some fierce restrictions on your alliances as an Outcast gang. If you're a house Outcast gang, you can only take house specific alliances only. So whatever alliances, strong alliances that a noble house takes, those are the only alliances you can make. So if you're really big on the whole alliance game system, just be aware that your alliances will be severely limited if you play a house Outcast game. And as always, when it comes to Outcast games specifically, you'll need to beware the wrath of the balance bandwagon. Unfortunately, the balance bandwagon will always find some way to scream and cry overpowered and balance and cry salty, bitter tears of why they're losing their games. So just be aware that every single time you play an Outcast gang, you will have to deal with the balance bandwagon of some sort, and they're always lurking about, hiding in the shadows, ready to spring upon you. So just be prepared to deal with that level of immaturity and just learn to move on beyond it. So, because the balance bandwagon is a legitimate thing you got to worry about. So now that we're done talking about the strengths and weaknesses of playing a house gang, Outcast gang, let's go ahead and talk about specifically about this house and the kind of benefits you could expect from it in your Outcast gang. So when it comes to playing a House Cawdor Outcast gang, ask yourself one question: are Cawdor fighters just too expensive for you? If you answer yes, then I highly suggest you play a House Cawdor Outcast gang for a couple reasons. One, their fighters are cheaper in an Outcast gang, but at the same time they still have access to the awesome Cawdor weapons and war gear that comes with the house list as well. As crazy as it may sound, you'll be able to field more fighters in an Outcast gang than a Cawdor gang and still do the same kind of cool tricks at exactly the same time with the weapons and equips they have. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but that is actually the truth. You can field more Outcast gang fighters with Cawdor weapons than a normal Cawdor gang can. And that's one of the cool things about playing an Outcast gang, especially for House Cawdor as well. And at the same time, you can also intermix Redemptionists and Cawdor gear throughout the entirety of the ranks of your Outcast gang as well. So for example, do you want to be able to take a Incombustible Hauberk with a Blunderbuss Cawdor polearm? You can do that because traditionally those two weapons are exclusive to Redemptionists or to Cawdor, but you can mix those up instead of a Cawdor gang as well. So because you can make some really awesome combinations and make some really powerful gang lists with those flexibility of weapons and equipment and the gear like that. However, there are some potential issues of playing a House Cawdor gang, so let's talk about that real quick. So, Articles of Faith. For those of you guys who are unaware, House Cawdor has an interesting game mechanic called Articles of Faith, where their gang can actually generate faith dice, and when they roll these faith dice, they can actually pull off miracles depending on what specific path of the redemption they actually follow. And there's a whole, litany of things you can choose from in order to help you out onto the battlefield as well. Now, the question that is asked with the potential issues in this section is, if you play a House Cawdor gang, can you use that Articles of Faith game mechanic? Now, there's two different arguments you can say on this one. So let's start with the yes argument. For those of you who say yes, you can use the Articles of Faith game mechanic for playing an Outcast gang, the answer as to why you can potentially is because Cawdor are Cawdor, regardless if they're part of the noble house or if they're redemptionists or they've been cast away because of whatever XYZ reasons, all right? Because, just because you're kicked out of a group doesn't mean you can't stop praying to whatever deity you want. It's kind of like if you're being kicked out of a religious faith, for example. I mean, they can excommunicate you out of religious faith in real life, but there's nothing that prevents you from actually praying to that deity anyways. So because of that, that could be a reason why you could argue that yes, you could use Articles of Faith, because as an Outcast gang you may be kicked out of House Cawdor, but you can still carry religious fervor with you at the same time. So that's one argument you can take. Now, the other argument you could say is that no, you can't, and here's why. All right, there's a reason why your Outcast gang has been kicked out from House Cawdor. All right, and whatever that reason is, it could possibly be because of a crisis of faith. Maybe your gang was kicked out because they actually don't believe in the Redemptionist cause, or they don't believe in the Emperor as a deity for that matter. And because of that issue, you've been kicked out, and that is why you can't use Articles of Faith. So at the end of the day, of course, it's all dependent upon your arbitrator for your campaign, whether they will allow you to or not. For me, as my arbitration, as I was arbitrating this, I would say yes, go ahead, because it just adds to the rule of cool in my opinion, and the rule of cool always wins and whenever it comes to my decision-making process. But at the same time, if your arbitrator says no, just understand your arbitrator is running their campaign, and so their word is final say. So keep that in mind if you decide to use Articles of Faith and whether you want to use this for your Cawdor Outcast gang or not. Now that we're done talking about potential issues of playing a Cawdor gang, let's go ahead and talk about the exploits you can abuse. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about exploits on this one. So I found some really interesting things within the House Outcast gangs that I like to call exploits. These are things that you can use to actually help make your gang, for your Outcast gang, extremely powerful. And the exploits in this situation for House Cawdor specifically is the armor that they can actually take. So let's talk about that real quick. So normally, when you actually take a Cawdor gang, you have access to a type of armor called Gutterforged cloaks. And what Gutterforged cloaks do is that they actually give you a 5+ save against environmental effects. And since you're going out into the ash waste, that's going to potentially help you out a lot, because there's a lot of environmental effects you got to deal with while in the ash waste. Now, the cool thing about Gutterforged cloaks is that you can wear this in combination with other armors as well, and it adds +1 to your armor save. So if you have a Gutterforged cloak, for example, you have a 6-up armor save with a 5-up ward save against environmental effects, which is kind of cool. However, because you combine it with other armors, you can combine it with mesh armor. So if you take mesh armor and Gutterforged cloaks, they'll give you a 4-up armor save with a 5 ward save against environmental effects. However, there's also another type of armor that's also available to a Cawdor gang, and that is in the Redemption. It's called an Incombustible Hauberk. Now, Incombustible Hauberk gives you a 5 up ward save against blaze tests, but that item could also be combined with other armors. So what you could, technically speaking, do is you could actually take a set of mesh armor, a Gutterforged Cloak, and an Incombustible Hauberk, and that'll give you a combined armor save of 3+ armor save, a 5 up ward save against environmental effects, and a 5 up ward save against blaze tests. But that's not the last piece of equipment you can wear. Another piece of armor is called the Pyromantic Mantle, and what the Pyromantic Mantle does is it gives your melee, your versatile, and unarmed attacks the blaze trait as well, and it can also be combined with other armors. So technically speaking, you can have 4 pieces of armor on your Outcast fighters. You can have mesh armor with a Gutterforged Cloak, with an Incombustible Hauberk, and top it all off with a Pyromantic Mantle. What that will do is give you a 3+ armor save with a 5 up ward save against environmental effects, with an additional 5 up ward save against blaze tests, and all of your melee, versatile, and unarmed attacks also have the blaze trait as well. So as you can see, this could be a very powerful combination of armors putting onto your Outcast fighters, and since your Outcast fighters only cost 30 credits apiece, and your champions only cost 60, you could really stack up these armors and make your fighters really resilient as well. So that's just an exploit I actually found, which is kind of interesting when it comes to the armor of the House Cawdor, especially if you put it with an Outcast gang. Just a thought, so if you're thinking about trying to defend your fighters even better out in the Ash Waste, this might be a real possible combination for you guys. Now, before we go to the gang list, of course, let's talk about the other fighters you have available to you. First of all, you do have your Underhive Outcast champion. These guys cost 60 points apiece. They have 5-inch movement, 3+ weapon skill, 4+ ballistic skill. They have 3 strength, 3 toughness, 2 wounds, 4 initiative, 1 attack. They have 6 leadership, 7 cool, 8 willpower, as well as 8 intelligence. Now, when it comes to your Outcast champions, they actually are pretty versatile with their stats, and the roles within your gangs can be fulfilling a lot of different roles for your gang. Now, there is some negatives, of course, with playing an Outcast champion, and that is your Archetype. Your Archetype is very limited for the type of skills that you can take for your gang. For example, you have 5 different Archetypes you can take, which are Brawler, which gives you Brawn as your primary, with Ferocity and Leadership as your secondary. Gunslinger, which makes shooting your primary, with Agility and Leadership as your secondary. You have Survivor, which gives you your Ferocity skill as your primary, with Combat and Leadership as secondaries. You have Mastermind, which gives you Cunning as primary, with Leadership and Savant as secondary. And then you have the Weird Archetype, which makes you have your Weird Powers and Disciplines be your primary, with Cunning and Leadership secondary. So you are kind of limited in the type of skills you can take, but you know, them's the breaks about actually playing a Outcast champion. Now, there are some positives of playing Outcast champions. One, their equipment is only limited by the rarity value on the trading post. So if you wanted to get other equipment besides the house starting lists that you can buy from, your rarity value is only determined by, I think, rarity value 8 or lower is what it is. So you can pretty much take whatever you want on that case, which is really nice. And another positive about playing an Underhive Outcast champion is that you can take 1 champion for every 3 Hive scum. So because of that, you have a lot more champions in your gang as the campaign develops. And of course, let's talk about the core of your gang, which is going to be your Underhive Outcast Hive Scum. Now, for these guys' stats, they cost 30 credits apiece. They have 5-inch movement, 4+ weapon skill and ballistic skill, 3 strength and toughness, 1 wound, 4+ initiative, 1 attack, and they have 8+ for leadership, cool, willpower, and intelligence. So unfortunately, the Outcast Hive Scum stats are very mediocre. But the positive is they're extremely cheap to field, only at 30 credits apiece, which is significantly cheaper than a lot of other gangs, as well as in some cases some juvies for some of the house lists that you can actually purchase from. So that part's kind of cool. Not to mention, your Hive Scum also count both as gangers as well as juvie level fighters in your gang as well. And that's really nice because for every 3 Hive Scum that you have in your gang, in your Outcast gang anyways, you can take 1 additional champion. Now, because their stats are so mediocre, that also means that the Outcast Hive Scum is very versatile because it can fill many different roles that you want with your gang. You can make them close combat fighters, you can make them shooters, you can give them psychic powers if you're able to do so through some kind of exploit. So that part is really nice about Hive Scum. They're very versatile and they can fulfill a lot of different jobs. Now, here's another unfortunate part. Unfortunately, when you create your Outcast gang, you cannot take a specialist right off the bat. You have to have that pop up later on as you gain experience. So you can't start off with any special weapons for your specialist as a campaign starts. But that's not so bad though, and the reason why is because the weapons they can purchase from the house lists, and at the same time you also have access to more champions than normal gang does as well. And that pretty much makes it my take on the Outcast Hive Scum. Alright, so let's talk about your very first list, which is the Redeemer's Crusade list. It's going to cost you 1,400 points, and for your leader, you're going to use Klovis the Redeemer. He's going to be the leader of your gang at costing you 140 credits. You're going to purchase this person a Gutterforged Cloak for their up armor, as well as the environmental effects, as well as give them the Brawler Archetype so that they have the Brawn skill tree. This person comes with Flak armor and a Incombustible Hauberk. They also got Master-crafted Eviscerator, Pyromantic Mantle, the Book of the Redemption, Bulging Biceps, Devotional Frenzy, Fearsome, Restless Faith, True Grit, Fierce Reputation, as well as Articles of Faith. You're going to give them the Bulging Biceps ability so that way they can use the Eviscerator as well as whatever kind of weapon they want to in the offhand as well. Now, after that, you'll have Deacon Malikev. This character is going to cost you 90 credits. This person's equipped with light carapace armor. You're going to purchase them a Gutterforged Cloak for that 5-up ward save against environmental effects, as well as a hand flamer so that way they can fight. You also give them they also come with the evade, lie low, as well as bodyguard skill. They also come with dedicated fighter, scribe, the liber excruciatus, and know your fate special rules. After that, you're going to recruit 2 Outcast champions, champions 1 and 2. Both are going to cost you 205 credits, and they're both equipped exactly the same. Both have Gunslinger archetypes with mesh armor. They have Gutterforged Cloaks for that 4-up armor save with a 5-up ward save against environmental effects. They're both equipped with combo weapons of autogun /flamers, so that way they can use autoguns and use flaming attacks. They both have reclaimed auto pistols and both have the fast shot ability, so they can fire those flamers twice per activation. After that, you got 2 Outcast Scum. Scum number 1 and 2, both will cost you 85 credits. Both are equipped with Gutterforged Cloaks for that 6-up armor save and 5-up ward save, as well as Cawdor pole arms with blunderbusses, so that way you can use blast template weapons. And then you also have 2 more Outcast Scum, Outcast Scum number 3 and 4. Both cost exactly the same at 95 credits apiece. Both have Gutterforged Cloaks for that 6-up armor and 5-up ward save against environmental effects. Both are packing chain axes with exterminators for one-shot flamers, as well as chain axes for close combat, as well as reclaimed auto pistols. And then finally, your vehicle is going to be the Pulpitech, which is a Scum Racer. It's going to cost you 400 credits. That Scum Racer is going to be piloting a heavy custom vehicle that's going to be tracked, so that way you don't have to worry about dangerous terrain. Now, I'll give you -1 to your movement allowance, but that's perfectly fine because you're taking extra armor for extra toughness, transport beds so you can take your fighters places. You have rams, so that way you can ram enemy vehicles without receiving any returning damage. All-wheel steering, as well as tire claws to give you +2 to your handling. Nitro burners to give you +1 movement, so that way you're just back to being a normal custom vehicle. Smoke fence, so that way your enemies suffer a -1 to hit against you in shooting. You have a boarding ramp for +1 initiative to boarding actions on enemy vehicles. You have boarding spikes to protect your vehicle from being boarded. Headlights in case you're in a situation where it's dark. Same thing with flare launchers. You got smoke launchers to fire off smoke grenades, as well as wheeled scythes in order to give yourself additional attacks when you rake against your enemies. And that pretty much makes it what we like to call the Redeemer's Crusade list. So let's talk about the gang overview next. Alright, so with the Redeemer's Crusade, you get to live out your craziest redemptionist dreams with this list. You have cheaper than redemptionist fighters in this gang, so because that you have almost similar stats, but they're a lot cheaper. So granted, you lose out on certain special rules, but you can still generate Articles of Faith dice because your leader can, and you equip your fighters more due to the Outcast cheaper costs. The Pulpitech does not come with any heavy weapons, however, so you'll need to upgrade it in the future as the campaign goes through, but it pretty much has all the different kits that it possibly needs. All you gotta do is give it some weapons. You're going to have +1 toughness to your entire hull, +2 handling, +1 movement, -1 hit against you against enemy shooting, +1 for initiative for boarding actions, defense against enemy borders, and the ability to fire smoke and flares, and bonuses to roaming actions as well. Now, I highly suggest that you also purchase mesh armor for your fighters that don't have it as soon as possible to give you guys a armor for say a 4-up, because you also got those Gutterforged Cloaks. Now, this gang consists of 2 fire teams. You have 1 support fire team and 1 assault fire team. Your support fire team will consist of Outcast champions number 1 and 2, Outcast Scum number 1 and 2, and your Scum Racer. This fire team primarily fights while mounted on the Pulpitech, but can fight dismounted if necessary. Your job is to protect the Pulpitech from enemy boarding actions. Outcast champions number 1 and 2 fire close to medium range with their autoguns. They can also fire their flamers when needed, and because they got the fast shot ability, they can fire those twice. At the same time, Outcast Scum number 1 and 2 use their blunderbusses to keep enemies at bay with their template weapons, and they can also engage in close combat with their pole arms. Now, for me, I highly suggest you purchase heavy weapons for the Pulpitech as soon as possible. I suggest either heavy flamers or, even better yet, autocannons, because those things are the pwn. After that, you have your Assault Fire team, which consists of Klovis the Redeemer, as well as Deacon Malakav, as well as Outcast Gunner 3 and Outcast Gunner 4. Now, this fire team's job is to fight dismounted or board enemy vehicles. Klovis the Redeemer is a close combat monster, so when he's going to combine with the Flamer on his Mastercraft Eviscerator, he can shoot down foes with those Flamers, burn them alive, and then chop them with this Eviscerator. Deacon Malakav's Fan Flamer is also really good for this as well, and when combined with your Scum's Exterminators, you'll have 4 10-plate shots at strength 3 for each one of those as well. Now, Klovis Redeemer and the Outcast Scum, of course, chop down their enemies down with their chain weapons, so that part's kind of nice. Meanwhile, Malakav shoots with his hand flamer to protect Klovis. I highly suggest you purchase a second hand flamer from Malakav as soon as possible, so that way you have more covering fire when you board enemy vehicles. And this is what I like to call the Redeemer's Crusade list. Alright, the next Cawdor Outcast list I like to call the Headman's Cometh list. It's going to cost you 1,395 credits. Your leader is going to be the Headman, the Dramatis Personae special character. It's going to cost you 300 credits for this guy. You're going to give him the Survivor Archetype, so that way you can equip him with Nerves of Steel skill, because he's going to be shot at quite a bit. He's equipped with Light Carapace armor, as well as a Gutterforged Cloak, which you're purchasing for him to give him that 1-up armor save and 5-up ward save against environmental effects. He comes with a 2-handed axe, as well as giving him a hand flamer, so that way you can also shoot as well. Give him a Stim Slug stash because he already has that. He's got the counterattack skill, the fearsome skill, the inspirational skill, as well as rain of blow skill. And when you take the Survivor Archetype, give him Nerves of Steel, so that way he can escape pinning by taking a cool test. After that, you'll have 2 Outcast champions. Champion number 1 is going to cost you 130 credits. He's got the Gunslinger Archetype. He's got Mesh armor with a Gutterforged Cloak, giving a 4-up armor save with a 5-up war save against environmental effects. He's got a Mastercrafted long rifle, as well as a reclaimed autogun, as well as a fast shot ability. Outcast champion number 2 is going to cost you 220 credits. He's got the Mastermind Archetype with Mesh armor and Gutterforged Cloak for that 4-up armor save, 5-up war save against against environmental effects. He's also got a Cawdor heavy crossbow with frag and crack shells, a reclaimed autogun, as well as the Overwatch ability, so that way you can interrupt enemy activations with that heavy crossbow. After that, you're going to have 2 Outcast Scum, Scum number 1 and 2. Both are going to cost you 135 credits apiece. Both will be equipped with Gutterforged Cloaks, as well as Cawdor pole arms with blunderbusses for template weapons, and they're both mounted on Waster's dirt bikes, so they can speed around and cause all kinds of problems. And you're going to have 2 more Outcast Scum afterwards, Outcast Scum number 3 and 4. Both will cost you 75 credits apiece. Both are equipped with Gutterforged Cloaks, as well as autoguns with Exterminators, so that way they have a strength 3 blast template weapon that's 1 shot. And then, of course, you're going to purchase a Guild of Coin Hauler for 325 credits. It's going to have a Cargo H Ridge Hauler with a Munitorium Armor Container, so that way you get boosts to your ammo rolls, as well as unlimited rerolls, as well as easy turnover engine in case anything should happen to it. And that pretty much makes up my Headsmith Cometh list. So now that we're done talking about what it consists of, let's talk about the gang overview. Now, this gang is a brutal close combat oriented gang that will use close quarters battle to achieve most of their objectives. Now for this one, this gang will fight defensively until better weapons are purchased for the Cargo 8 Ridge Hauler. It does come with a Munitorium Armor Container, which will give you unlimited reloads for your weapons and +2 on your ammo rolls, which will help considerably for your, especially for your blunderbusses, as well as for your autoguns, as well as for like your heavy weapons like your heavy crossbow and your Mastercrafted long rifle. Now this gang consists of 3 fire teams. You have 1 support fire team and 2 assault fire teams. Your first support fire team consists of Outcast Champion 1 and 2, as well as your Guild of Coin Hauler. This fire team's job is to provide medium to long range covering fire for your gang. Outcast Champion number 1 uses their long rifle to engage targets at longer distances, spamming fast shot for 2 shots per activation. Meanwhile, Outcast Champion number 2 interrupt enemy activations with their heavy crossbow, using those blast templates from either frag or crack bolts. And as soon as possible, purchase heavy weapons for the Guild of Coin Hauler. I say heavy stubbers are actually really nice because you have a 2-up armor ammo roll for those, or stone bolters are really good too, but they don't have as much range as heavy stubbers do. After that, you have Assault Fire Team number 1, which consists of your Headsman, as well as Outcast Scum number 3 and Outcast Scum number 4. This fire team's job is to fight defensively from the Cargo 8 Ridge Hauler. They can board enemy vehicles if they need to, or fight dismounted if necessary as well. The Headman's job is to charge forward and engage your enemies at close combat using that massive axe of theirs. Meanwhile, Outcast Scum number 3 and 4 support with the assault firing their Exterminators for strength 3 flamers, and then firing their autoguns in close range. Now, I suggest recruit future fighters with better close combat weapons as the campaign develops. Chain axes with Exterminators are a good choice. Chain swords are also good, but Eviscerators also make the best weapons because they come with chain swords with flamers. After that, you got Assault Fire Team number 2, which consists of Outcast Scum number 1 and Outcast Scum number 2. This fire team's job is to assault the enemy on an exposed plank. They also have template weapons due to their blunderbusses, and they can engage enemies with their pole arms as well. And their movement at 8 from their dirt bike makes them excellent scouts who can run down their enemies, killing them in close combat, or finishing off your enemies in coup de grace. Recruit future fighters the same loadout for a greater effect as the campaign develops over time, and before I know it, you'll be claiming the Ash Waste in the name of Lord Cawdor. And that's what I like to call the Headman's Cometh list for this one for 1,395 credits. Alright, so the very last list that I have here is what I like to call Dr. Drybrush's Brotherhood of the Dying Light list for 1,400 credits. Now, in case you guys don't know who Dr. Drybrush is, Dr. Drybrush is a fellow YouTuber who makes amazing narrative Necromunda battle reports. He's got a really interesting narrative style as well as video effects on his. I highly suggest you check it out because he had actually just got done completing doing a community event for the fall of his campaign, which is really, really awesome as well. And his gang is known as the Brotherhood of the Dying Light. So, you're going to play a Nurgle Corrupted Outcast gang. So you're going to get a Nurgle Corrupted Outcast leader. He's going to cost you 355 credits, and you're picking the Resilience stat for this fighter as well. This fighter's got the Survivor archetype. You're going to equip this fighter with Mesh Armor as well as a Gutterforged Cloak for a 4-up armor save, 5-up ward save against environmental effects. You're going to give this person a master crafted chain glaive as well as a hand flamer. They're going to be mounted on a waster's dirt bike, and they also got the Nerves of Steel skill, so that way they can skip pinning, and you give them +1 wound because they're Nurgle Corrupted, which means this guy will have 4 wounds on their characteristics. After that, you got a Nurgle Corrupted Outcast Champion number 1. It's going to cost you 165 credits. This character's got the Survivor archetype as well as Mesh Armor. They're equipped with Cawdor pole arm with Blunderbuss as well as a waster's dirt bike, and they also have the Nerves of Steel skill. And then you'll have another Nurgle Corrupted Outcast Champion number 2. It's going to cost you 130 credits. This person's got the Survivor archetype as well as Mesh Armor, as well as a Gutterforged Cloak. They're also packing a Cawdor polearm with Blunderbuss, as well as a Nerves of Steel skill as well. After that, you will have 2 Outcast Scum, number 1 and 2. Both will cost you 120 credits. Both are armed with Cawdor polearms with blunderbusses as well as Waster's dirt bikes. Then you have 2 more Outcast Scum, number 3 and 4. Both of them will cost you 80 credits apiece. Both are equipped with chain axes with exterminators as well as reclaimed auto pistols. And then finally, you have a Nurgle Corrupted Scum Racer, who's going to cost you 350 credits. This guy is driving a rock grinder with twin linked autocannons. And that pretty much makes the list what I like to call the Nurgle Corrupted Dr. Drybrush's Brotherhood of the Dying Light build. Now let's go and talk about the gang overview real quick. You'll be playing a cheaper version of a Nurgle Corrupted Cawdor gang, which is always a cool thing. You'll have access to Cawdor weapons, as well as Cawdor equipment, and at the same time the powers of Nurgle, making your current gang incredibly resilient as well. Your leader will have 4 wounds with a 4-up armor save and a 5-up ward save against environmental effects, with the ability to roll 2 recovery dice and choosing the best one for your injury dice for your gang, which is all kinds of awesome. At the same time, this gang's tactic is pretty much based on their aggressive offensive list, so close the distance to your enemy and bring the pain. And plus, your game will consist of 2 fire teams, 1 assault fire team, and 1 support fire team. Now, your assault fire team will consist of your Nurgle Corrupted Outcast leader, your Nurgle Corrupted Outcast Champion number 1, Outcast Scum number 1, and Outcast Scum number 2. This fire team's mission is to charge forward on their wasters' dirt bikes, taking the fight to the enemy. Their template weapons will help with accuracy and damage for shooting. Meanwhile, they're also kitted out for close combat with their polearms and mastercrafted chain glaive. Charge in at an exposed flank to maximize damage on your enemies. Your leaders and your champions do have Nerves of Steel, which should help you escape pinning when it occurs. And as the campaign develops, I suggest you purchase more armor for your scum and maybe pyromantic mantles for your blazing attacks in close combat, so that we can do that. Now, your support fire team will consist of your Nurgle Corrupted Champion number 2, Outcast Scum number 3, Outcast Scum number 4, and your Nurgle Corrupted Scum Racer. This fire's team's mission is to provide destructive long-range firepower with the Scum Racer's twin-linked autocannons. Rain destruction on your enemies from afar with this. Meanwhile, Outcast Champion number 2, Scum number 3, and Scum number 4 are responsible for protecting the rock grinder. They can use their template weapons to wipe out enemy attacks to close in, and of course, as the campaign develops, purchase better armor like Gutterforged Cloaks for examples, and I highly suggest getting pyromantic mantles for them for better armor saves and more blazing attacks as well. And this is what I like to call Dr. Drybrush's Brotherhood of the Dying Light build. Alright, so in conclusion, playing a House Outcast gangs is one of the coolest gangs you could possibly play in Necromunda. Outcast gangs have more access to fully customizable leaders with either Dramatis Personae or custom leaders you build, making some of the most amazing interesting gangs that are available to play in this gaming system. Not to mention, Outcast gangs also have cheaper champions and fighters than normal House gangs, but at the same time, you have access to all the same weapons, war gear, boots, and hanger-ons that a House gang automatically comes with. Meanwhile, there are no weapon and equipment restrictions from the house list either, so whatever the house list has available to you, you can use that to all of your fighters regardless if it's a fighter specific gear. It could be taken by your entire gang as well. Now of course, as always, there is a drawback to playing a House Outcast gang, and that drawback comes in the form of the Balanced Bandwagon. So you'll always have to put up with the immature and hateful speech of Balanced Bandwagoneers, who will do things like cry out arguments of overpowered and game imbalance instead of looking for creative solutions to solving their problems or just getting better at playing the game. They'd rather blame you than, reflect on their own performance and make adjustments accordingly. So keep that in mind if you decide to play a House Outcast gang. So that's good to do it for this week, guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also check us on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest greatest hobby news related to this channel. That's good for this week, guys. We'll catch you guys next one. Peace out and stay classy.